You think change begins when your behavior changes, when you finally stop, finally leave, finally react differently, as if transformation only becomes real once it becomes visible. But most change begins much earlier than that. Long before action changes, something inside you already has a slow shift in perception, a subtle reorganization of what your system notices, moves toward, withdraws from, or no longer fully believes. And because these changes happen quietly, they rarely feel important at first. There is no dramatic realization, no clear dividing line, no obvious moment where the old version of you ends and the new one begins. Most of it happens beneath recognition, quietly, gradually, before thought arrives to explain what is already changing. First, the difference is almost invisible. A reaction feels weaker than before. An old habit stops resolving tension the way it once did. Certain conversations begin to feel strangely empty. The familiar environment starts feeling emotionally distant, not painful, not unbearable, just less convincing, as if some internal alignment has started loosening without fully breaking apart. And because the change is incomplete, you often try to ignore it. You try to return to the previous rhythm, the previous emotional structure, the previous continuity. But once perception shifts, even slightly, the old structure rarely feels seamless again. Most people imagine transformation as a decision, a conscious act of will, but behavior is usually the last thing to change. Before action changes, attention changes, emotional weight changes, interpretation changes, what feels meaningful changes. And once those deeper structures begin reorganizing themselves, your experience of reality changes with them, even before you notice, because the mind does not simply observe reality, it filters it, selects from it, amplifies certain details, suppresses others, builds significance through repetition and familiarity. And over time, those filters quietly shape what feels true, important, or necessary. That is why inner change often feels confusing at first, because the old emotional sequences begin losing precision before new ones fully form. The previous structure no longer feels entirely alive, but the next one has not stabilized yet either. And in between those two states, there is often uncertainty, a strange psychological space where nothing feels fully synchronized anymore. People often mistake this for instability, for confusion, for emotional fatigue, when sometimes what they are actually experiencing is reorganization. The system is slowly losing loyalty to patterns it once trusted automatically, and that process can feel deeply uncomfortable because familiarity, even when limiting, still creates orientation. It tells the system what to expect, how to respond, where meaning is supposed to be found. So when familiarity weakens, even slightly, people instinctively try to restore it, to return to what once felt coherent, even if that coherence was built on repetition rather than truth. Most conditioning survives because it remains invisible, integrated into identity. It does not feel like conditioning. It feels like personality, preference, instinct, reality itself. But once the structure becomes visible, something changes, even before behavior changes, because awareness creates distance, a small separation between the movement and the observing of the movement. And that distance matters, because what feels invisible feels inevitable, but what becomes visible can eventually be interrupted. Not immediately, not through force, but gradually, through repeated moments, where attention arrives early enough to witness the pattern before automatic completion occurs. First, the interruption is small, almost nothing. The pause, a hesitation, a delayed reaction, a moment where the old emotional sequence fails to close, with its usual speed, and inside that gap, however brief, something new becomes possible, not because a new identity has fully formed, but because inevitability has weakened slightly. The automatic movement no longer operates with total invisibility, and once that happens, the structure begins losing certainty, not all at once, but enough for another possibility to become imaginable. Real transformation rarely feels dramatic. While it is happening, most of it unfolds quietly, beneath language, beneath narrative, beneath the explanations people later construct to make sense of what already changed inside them. The mind arrives late, calls the process healing, awakening, detachment, but the actual shift usually began much earlier, in subtle friction, in weakened repetitions, in small unnoticed moments, where the old continuity started failing to complete itself with the same certainty as before. You were already changing before you realized it, before you named it, before your visible behavior caught to what had already started reorganizing itself underneath. And maybe that is why real transformation often feels strange at first, because it does not begin as certainty. It begins as quiet dissonance, as the subtle realization that what once moved through you automatically no longer fits with the same precision it once did. Not because you forced change, not because you reinvented yourself, but because something inside you began shifting before thought had time to explain it. And once that process begins, even quietly, even invisibly, the old structure never feels completely unquestionable again. If this felt familiar, subscribe. This channel is about seeing the pattern before it becomes you. And if something already shifted while watching this, continue here.